Hey, welcome to the Infinity Bros podcast, the only podcast that is perfectly balanced as all things should be. I'm your host, Max Mosier, here. Grateful to be with you on a midweek episode. Thanks for checking us out. You can see us on theinfinitybros.com and everywhere that podcasts are listened to. I'm here with my co-host today, one of the other 5 bros that are on this show regularly, Infinity Bro Mark. Mark, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm glad I can tickle the ears of the Infinity Bros universe once again.
It's good to be back. It's great to be back on a Disney Plus MCU series. This seems to be one of the hot ticket items for our show, as you and I have gone, as we would say, deep into the weeds with WandaVision and the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I sense that that is the route we will be going on this episode, just after watching one episode of the show.
That's correct. Indeed.
I love that you just let me hang in there.
I'm just trying to save as much time since we've consolidated our time. So, can't go too far in the weeds in the beginning. I want to wait for the meat of the show to really go into the weeds.
That's okay. That's okay. We will get the ball rolling early so our new listeners, who I hope are listening for the first time, can enjoy this episode. And I'm sure people are thinking a lot about this episode because I think it opens a lot of things up. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about our full expectations of what this show could be from our perspective. We're going to break down this episode. We will give a non-spoiler review on the front. So until you hear a spoiler warning, we will not spoil any details of this show. You have our word on that.
What?
And then at the end, we will end with our top 5 of this show, moments of this show, excuse me. So you'll want to stick around to the end and hang out with us. But we hope that if this is your first time that you enjoy us and enjoy our breakdowns because we just love this series as much as you probably do. It's probably why you're looking for podcasts to chew on with this. And Mark, to start real quick, I'd love to make sure people are familiar with our rating system that we're going to discuss and reference when we talk about things. So I'm going to go ahead and put that bumper right here.
Here on the Infinity Bros podcast, everything is ranked from a 0 to 6 point scale. 0 meaning horrible, and 6 meaning absolutely excellent. If all of the Infinity Bros rank something a 6, it gets an infinity step.
Mark, tell the audience from your perspective, what is your expectation of this show, and what was your rating of Falcon and the Winter Soldier and WandaVision? You can be brief on that, but what is your expectation of this show coming into the 3rd Disney Plus series, and how have you felt so far with all these Disney Plus series?
Oh, I've loved all the Disney Plus series for Marvel. Hopefully they've been knocking them out of the park. I kind of expect this specific series to kind of set up or, tickle the fans about the new big bad. That's kind of what I got after this episode 1. My ratings of the first 2 series as a whole, I'd probably give them both 6s. So,
what is your expectation from your perspective of this series 2? Because this one was kind of the enigma I felt of the 3. WandaVision, we had a clear understanding. Just kidding, it was completely abstract. But we had an understanding that it was going to be Wanda processing something through this medium of television, whereas Falcon and the Winter Soldier was going to be this buddy, cross-country adventure. It obviously explored other things that some people weren't aware of. We were aware of on this show. What are your expectations of this show as it deals with time travel and a character that is essentially thrust from 2010, that we're right back to where that Loki was, versus the growth and progression we saw him in the other Thor movies and the Infinity War series?
I feel like this series, just after episode 1, is going to be an allegory of how personal growth and fighting with your inner demons is going to play out, because obviously we get Loki from Avengers basically just transplanted into, the time variance, and having to see this Loki grow versus, we can't, it took me probably 10 minutes to really, process it. Hey, this isn't the Loki at Endgame or Infinity War. This is Loki right after the Avengers. So it's he's not going to be the same that we expected. And he kind of got to grow. He's going to grow from there.
Brief reviews. WandaVision, I give a 3 out of 6, and Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I give a 5 out of 6. You can check out those reviews on previous episodes. My expectations are very similar. I think this is going to be, I love the way you phrased it, an allegory for Loki. I also would add on, I think this is the major setup for everything coming down the line. I think this is how you tie in every single property that's coming past this, with Kang the Conqueror coming in Ant-Man, with Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, with Spider-Man No Way Home, and all the crazy rumors we've heard about that. I even think properties like Shang-Chi and just these other new characters coming down the line are going to be included in this as well. And I'm really pumped about it. We got a lot of other things we got to talk about that we unfortunately would be spoiling if we did so. So we're going to go ahead and quick give our non-spoiler reviews of episode 1. And I will go first as I talk about this. And I'm going to give this episode a 5 out of 6. I thought this was a very strong episode. I've heard a lot of people say that this is the strongest Disney Plus season opener that they've had so far. I would agree with that, but my standards are still significantly high with everything, and I'm also a little damaged with how I thought WandaVision went. And so I am holding back from giving this a full 6 out of 6. There was a ton also of exposition in this episode. And I know a lot of people liked it because there were Easter eggs and it kind of set the layout of how this is going to go. However, from my perspective, there was still just a little more I would have liked. Some of the beats were very easy to see. Some were new and crazy, but the stage is set down the line for this series to be fantastic. I still think this show is great. Tom Hiddleston is knocking it out of the park. Tons of other actors and actresses we're going to talk about in our non-spoiler, in our spoiler portion, that we'll reference as well as trivia. But from my perspective, that is my rating of this episode so far, and I'm pretty pumped for the next 5 episodes of this as well. Mark, what is your rating of episode 1?
I would also give it a 5 out of 6 because I just felt like there was a lot of. I mean, it had to happen just to kind of catch this Loki up, but just a lot of like repeat of what we've already seen, just as an audience member. But yeah, like tons of exposition, tons. I feel like, little things at this point it has to be the producer or director had to like legit do stuff on purpose, not WandaVision people who are like, oh well, that we didn't know that existed. Weird coincidence. But definitely Calvinist beliefs exist in the Marvel Universe. Clearly, everything is set to happen as it should, and if you try to touch it, you will be killed.
It feels a little spoilery, but I like it, and I accept that. That's very funny. So that is our non-spoiler review of this episode. If you're somebody who was just curious what our thoughts were going into it, or you were on the fence about watching it, please hear this as us saying we really are excited about this series as well. We're going to go ahead and jump into spoilers, talk about potential spoilers and trivia. That's why we're holding out some of the information we're going to share in that portion, because there's kind of a lot of spoilers that were happening behind the scenes for this in how this whole thing was being built. So we didn't want to spoil that on the front end. So this is your final spoiler warning for Loki episode 1.
This is
Prepare yourself.
an Infinity Bros
Prepare yourself.
spoiler warning.
All right, Mark, we got a lot of things we got to talk about with this. First,
Do we want to talk about the big elephant in the room?
I think
for the next 40 minutes. Mephisto is back on the table, boys.
okay. So here's what was okay. I know what you're going to start with. We're going to talk about Isaac's review in a bit. I'm going to give Infinity Bro Isaac's review here in a second, but
Okay.
Mephisto is totally back on the table. I don't believe anything they're saying. I'm with you, Mark. I don't believe that they haven't talked about Mephisto. Again, we're right back to this same conversation point. We've said it on this show for so long. Marvel, if you're not going to do Mephisto, let me start over. Marvel, if you're not going to do Mephisto, then stop putting satanic, devil-like things in every scene. Please.
Oh, no. But in this, I agree with you, Max. But in this episode, when Owen Wilson's character goes to the French boy to be like, hey, what did you see? And then he points to the stained glass of the devil, and who else could that possibly be, Marvel? Screw you.
Yeah, I think it doesn't necessarily mean Mephisto is going to be in it. Like, I believe it is a viable theory. I think it's ridiculous that people are tagging me on Twitter right now going, he's not going to be in it. It's like, stop. They're putting it out there. This is a totally viable theory. And these directors are acting like we're crazy for even insinuating that it could be a thing. It's just wild. It's baloney. But Yeah, that's the elephant in the room. We had to get that out of the way. So if you listen to this show for a long time, you know that Mark and I have been big advocates, or as Mark would say, Mephisto's advocates, that he should be in this series anyway, just in the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe. This comes from Isaac Edlund, Isaac Callistic, one of the Infinity Bros. Dang, bro, Loki's going to be the best Disney Plus show yet. Episode 1 was great. We're going to get some amazing character development in a character that was already pretty fleshed out. Episode 1 was the best premiere of all the Disney Plus shows we've seen. 6 for 6 for Loki episode 1. Forgive my cat meowing in the background. This is the first Marvel Studios villain-centric project, Mark. Screen Rant reported that in 2020 of May that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Clark Gregg may have inadvertently spoiled that Disney Plus Loki TV series has already been renewed for a second season. So that's kind of a 2-for-1 spoiler. One, that we're probably getting a second season, which I already, after watching this, don't know how they're not going to go past this season. You can't blow all of this up in 6 episodes, right?
Well, and the whole thing, with it being time travel is legitimately he could travel through time just like, Legends of Tomorrow or like Umbrella Academy. And literally at the end, when they're like, oh, we're ready to wrap it up, you just place him right back where he needs to be.
Not only that, but that basically spoils that Clark Gregg is going to be in this series in some capacity. For me, when they're showing Loki's greatest hits, air quotes, so when Owen Wilson's character Mobius is showing all these things that happened in Loki's arc up to this point, and Clark Gregg got a very centric moment there, I felt like he's going to come back in some capacity. It kind of felt like in Falcon and the Winter Soldier when Wakanda kept getting brought up. You're like, okay, Wakanda's going to show up here.
Is that where we're going to get Agent Coulson being brought up the next 4 episodes and finally show up in episode 6?
Well, and I wonder how much they're going to talk about in that series. They messed with time too, right? So, I mean, I wonder how much he'll get brought up for that.
Yep.
But Michael Waldron was brought in as the showrunner due to his work on the adventure comedy Rick and Morty. This was really interesting too. So Emergency Awesome pointed this out when I watched a recap video of his today. How the Citadel of Ricks in Rick and Morty was based off of, the Citadel of Reeds from Fantastic Four. Mm-hmm. And now, essentially, they're referencing Rick and Morty in this time variance authority because there's some things that are just like referencing Rick and Morty, right? And so now it's essentially become this paradox of references. Like, where did the reference start? I just thought that was interesting. You did not share that. You just hung me out to dry there just now. You just like looked at me. Like you didn't even like give me a nah, you didn't give me a huh, you didn't give me anything.
I said yep.
Well, yeah, I don't know. Like what do you want from me here?
I don't know what you want me to say.
I want you to be like, oh, that's pretty cool. I want you to be like, that's really stupid.
It's okay, Max. I don't know what you want me to say.
I don't know either at this point.
Max is now mad, everybody, because I did, pat him on the back, telling him good boy.
And this is really odd, too. So rather than read Marvel Comics to prepare for the role of Agent Mobius, Owen Wilson had Tom Hiddleston explain the entire MCU to him. Like, this is kind of, this breaks my heart to hear that Owen Wilson didn't watch the MCU up to this point.
I don't know his life. Some people just, don't have the time to watch movies.
Whatever, dog. You know better than that.
I don't know. Yeah, you got to take that up with Owen Wilson.
I don't know. I guess I just wouldn't peg him as a cinematic snob. Given his career, I would not have pegged him as that.
Are you telling me Starsky and Hutch isn't an elite movie?
No, I'm not.
Oh, okay.
This is me on record saying that Starsky and Hutch is not an elite movie, guys.
Okay, well then maybe you got a point.
Yeah, that's fair. This stars Tom Hiddleston as Loki, Owen Wilson as Mobius and Mobius, Gugu Mbatha Raw as Ravonna Renslayer. I butchered Ravonna Renslayer, but not her name.
You were so concerned about butchering the names, and then you butchered the comic book name. That's hilarious.
And I wrote that down. I had notes on that. Wunmi Masaku plays Hunter B-15, and Erica Coleman plays Florence Schaffner. John Levine as Paperwork Clerk, and Aaron Boehner as the Robot Scanner. Eugene Cordero as Casey, I thought was hilarious. Great clip. He was in The Good Place. He plays the brother of one of the main characters in that. And I just think that actor is hilarious. I think he needs to be getting more roles. And then very interesting is Tara Strong as Miss Minute, Mark, playing the cartoon clock. Yeah. And she is, I mean, you're a very big fan of Harley Quinn. That's a pretty big get, I think, for you and for Marvel, right? Like, I mean, that's like HOF in regards to cartoon voices.
Oh, yeah, for voice actors. For sure, she's, probably on the Mount Rushmore of voice acting.
Whoa.
Which then leads to, if Tara Strong is the voice of this character that's on, like, the clip that it kind of explains the TVA, that means she's probably, a real person or robot, maybe, I don't know, in this TVA world.
Let's talk about this, because I think now we've been itching to talk about specific details. So let's lock into these. So we start with this series starting with essentially Loki's ending in Endgame, and we get a very condensed version of what happens in that New York scene where he essentially gets the Tesseract and goes to another part of the globe. He gets caught by the Minutemen, and we right away get to see these guys do some crazy things. They hit them with their weapon, and it slows him down to 1/16th speed, and everything else is normal. What did you think of that?
That was some good camera work, I thought. It's like, I want to know how they were able to... Like, obviously, they probably laid, the video on top of each other, but it just seemed pretty cool that someone had to think of that and then figure out how to film it.
I thought it was also a sweet detail that he felt every painful second of that. I was like, that is messed up. And I like this concept of the Minutemen, too, that they've kind of been doing things behind the scenes. Are we going to find out, Mark, you think that, because they they set their little, I forget what it was called, the thing that was essentially resetting the timeline.
Their time ring or whatever. I don't remember.
I forget what the weapon is called.
I just thought it was like, it's a time ring, like a sling ring for the wizards, time ring for the timekeepers.
Sure, I was talking more about the device they set on the ground that when they were leaving was resetting the timeline.
I don't remember what they called it, but yeah, with the reset.
Yeah, the resetter. We'll call it the resetter just for the sake of our dialogue. I was fascinated with that. Like, how many times have they used that before in the MCU? Has this been seen before? Have our characters experienced this and they don't even know they've experienced this? I wonder if that's going to come back into play in other things. Like, I wonder if that has to do with why certain characters such as the X-Men and the Fantastic Four aren't known, right? Like, this kind of delves to me more into the Fantastic Four range. They would be the group to kind of hang out in this kind of realm personally. And again, I'm getting in the weeds, but this just puts another layer of a potential way you can answer this question.
Let's go into this really quick. When we're watching, when Loki is in this like waiting room and he finally sees, like, the TV goes on explaining the TVA, and they kind of like quickly explain the timeline and the multiverse and whatever. Are we to believe that they currently are in the multiverse and it's all connected into one timeline?
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's the multiverse is already happening. So, I mean, let's go even farther into the weeds. So when Doctor Strange does Multiverse of Madness, he's obviously breaking these streams apart, or something has happened at the end of this episode that breaks the multiverse.
Well, and not only that, but what that revelation shows, because you're talking about the future, but let's talk about the past real quick in this MCU arc.
It's all the same.
Fair, very fair point. The other thing that was eye-opening here is they are clearly going into Secret Wars. That's the direction Avengers 5 is, guys. We got that answer today. And that was mind-blowing to me. That they were talking about timelines battling each other and essentially having to rip them apart and make them one timeline. There is no question in my mind we're going to see a Secret Wars movie in the next 5 to 6 years. Maybe longer, just like for the sake of timeline purposes of making these movies. But that's the next buildup, right? You have Kang from Quantumania. You have the crap going on in Spider-Man. You have the crap going on in Doctor Strange. I mean, the Nexus points. I mean, we got to talk about that too, Mark.
Another Nexus drop.
That's the second Nexus drop, and you know that Doctor Strange is going to make some form of a reference to that. We learned that Scarlet Witch is a Nexus being, which means she is essentially stronger than an Infinity Stone. She can change the timeline herself, and they probably aren't going to do anything about it because that's her specific individual power, right?
Well, I mean, this probably is leading, like you said, Secret Wars, and we just got the first glimpse of it about the timelines fighting against each other. Let's just say this. Scarlet Witch creates a new timeline. Loki creates a new timeline. Kang creates a new timeline in Ant-Man because he's able to do that. And that's how you branch off and probably bring in other characters that haven't been in the Marvel Universe we have been before. And Secret Wars combines the multiverse back together.
So from your perspective, you look at this as, okay, maybe X-Men are just going to come from another universe and then be combined in our universe.
Well, I mean, that kind of made it somewhat clear that that did happen in the combined the universes. That means they probably picked and choose the three watchers or whatever they call them, the timekeepers. Yeah. So I'm assuming something similar might happen, and that's how Eternals get involved too, where it's like, okay, well, now we got to get involved because the time's all effed up, and probably the Keepers got killed or something. Like Kang probably killed them or something.
Yeah,
and then Galactus is like, hey, I want to kill everyone. And then, Eternals are like, hey, we can actually help now because TVA was keeping us back from actually helping.
So from your perspective, you think the Eternals were more held back by the TVA than we think?
I think that's another thing we got from this is like, because that was an issue. It's like, oh, we've waited, we've never intervened until now, and everyone gave that crap. I gave it crap. It's like, what, Thanos destroying half the universe wasn't good enough? Well, clearly they told us in this first episode that everything was meant to happen.
Maybe this is how they got their mind wiped in all of it, because the question in all of our minds has been, where were you during Infinity War and Endgame in essentially the biggest event in the timeline up to that point?
Maybe they weren't supposed to intervene. Maybe that's because they have inside knowledge on the TVA where they're like, hey, you can't intervene or we'll just keep resetting you.
Or they don't know about the or they don't know about the TVA, and then the TVA is just like, nah, we're resetting you and you get to wait it out till this is done. Or that happened
too. Yeah.
Because the Avengers have to be the one to stop this. And obviously we get the answer too, and we'll talk about the recap of this show too, guys, but we get the answer, obviously, Mark, of the Avengers going back in time, because that was the very first thing I thought when they started talking about all these rules.
Hey, wait a second.
Yeah, I was like, time out. You got a big problem. You better address it right now, because if not, there are going to be a lot of angry nerds on the internet. And what did you think? Did you think the answer was good enough from their perspective of, nope, the Avengers had to do it, that's why they could break the rule?
Well, it's not necessarily breaking. There's no rule breaking about time travel, because at the end of the episode, they're like, oh, it's another time travel device from the early 300th decade or whatever. Yeah. So like the year 3000. So clearly the TVA knows people figure out time travel, and it's meant to happen. So I think that's like just going back to Calvinist belief, if you're one of these people, that everything is, they literally the three, are they called the timekeepers? Like three beings or whatever, the Celestials or whatever they call them.
I'll figure that out.
Have literally dictated what is all happening. And if it deviates from that, that's when these people come in and reset the timeline.
They are called the timekeepers. That is correct.
Yeah. So yeah, I can believe it, because like, hey, they pretty much soft tossed it to you. They didn't make it any more complicated. So I can buy it. I'm in on it.
This to me was really great job by Michael Waldron. He had a task in this, not only as he's one of the people credited for this, but for creating this, but he wrote this, and he had to land these rules correctly for a multitude of reasons. The biggest one, in my opinion, was Endgame. Because if you're going to talk about time travel, you got to talk about how that was able to work, and none of these guys got in the way, or maybe they were watching but not doing anything. And again, this gets to the Eternals, and now we'll add TVA to that group of like, man, there were all these other people doing stuff. What were all these other people doing? And we're getting answers. I thought it was also very meta how the commercial was talking about, the timekeepers are the ones that build the narrative, Mark. I thought that was really interesting that they were talking about specific narratives. I'm like,
yep.
Man, that's a very, very good way to reference Kevin Feige. I wonder if I would love it if one of the timekeepers was Kevin Feige. I think that'd be great. He'd be so funny to have him be that actor. I think that'd be...
Him and who's the other one? Louis Esposito?
Yeah, Louis Esposito. Oh, gosh. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe,
and Ryan Coogler,
maybe one of the Russo brothers.
Yeah.
Oh, Coogler would be great too. Yeah, it'd be funny just to have like a hodgepodge of really, really big. Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I love it. I thought that was very, very meta of it. What did you think of this feel in this aesthetic? In this?
Oh, a very like
very 80s,
I was gonna say like, yeah, late 70s, early 80s futuristic like aesthetic. Like, I'm watching what's the show? Soylent Green, where they're talking about the future, and like, everything's still very 70s esque, but like trying to be futuristic. That's what it felt like to me. I loved it.
I did too. And I thought the look was perfect for what they're trying to do here. These characters that are the timekeepers are clearly not human. They were created for this purpose, we find out. And I thought they had to be quirky.
But created in human image, which it's another thing. Food for thought. When the timekeepers look like lizards, as Loki points out.
There are a lot of weird biblical references in this that aren't normally as in your face as I would say most MCU things are, but I think that was just Waldron's style on this one. And we find out, Mark, we talked about this too, but the sacred timeline. How do you feel about there being one sacred singular timeline? Do you buy that right now? Because you're one of the biggest proponents for like multiverses really work. I'm not in that camp as much as you are, but I know for you, the DC universe, that's your big push. I couldn't help but think that here, Mark. I was like, oh, is Marvel now in a race to kind of monopolize that story arc as well? Not that they're like competing against DC, but more so from their perspective of saying, yeah, we need to get one of these timeline arcs going.
Well, and I think they're going to do a good job explaining it and how, instead of taking it, hey, we're going to take Fantastic Four from this, basically all the superheroes that they didn't have pre-Fox, and just how do you bring them all back, or how do you bring them in? And like I kind of said before, is I think each coming up movie, even Spider-Man's going to have a multiverse split. Something's happening because of the, the snap. 2 snaps, really. And then this, and maybe Loki, this we'll find out in this Loki series where, hey, maybe there's something bigger that, the timekeepers can't control anymore. And, you have villains out there. Like, they've already said King the Conqueror is going to be in Ant-Man. So it's like, hey, there's another being that's able to change the timeline and have kind of powers to do that, like the timekeepers do. And then, going back to Nexus, Galactus is a Nexus being. So I'm sure he has some abilities that can affect this.
Well, and Ravonna Renslayer, she's a lover of King the Conqueror in the comics.
There it is.
That's such a huge reference there that not many people who aren't familiar with comic books are going to know. I just see that the direction they're going is becoming more clear, Mark, and I'm actually way more into it than I thought I was going to be at this point. And even when, this is jumping ahead towards the end of the episode, but when you get the reveal that, hey, these Infinity Stones are just paperweights to these people, that's a huge moment of like, we are totally letting go of what was just happening, guys. In our minds as viewers, those were the 6 MacGuffins. Those were the 6 things that if you have them, you're in business. And now in this air quotes world or corner of this universe, as we'll have to call it,
or quantum realm.
Yeah, quantum realm, whatever you want to call it. It changes that game completely. And so now, how do you defeat these kind of guys? Like, to me, there's no way the TVA doesn't become the villain at the end of this, right? Like, Loki's new journey, it looks like, is going to be to beat these guys.
I mean, maybe. I don't know. I don't know about that. I'm not in that camp yet. There's not been enough where I'm thinking like the TVA is the bad people. I knew with what's her name, something Slayer. I knew she was partnered up with King and Conqueror, but if she's actually like they're a couple, that would kind of explain. Like, I just feel like that's how you kind of like end the series, is King kind of shows up, or so. I don't know.
Well, and I wonder too, is this going to be?
I'm open there for this. It's like there's so many different avenues you could go with this because it's a timeline and time travel series. So
is this going to be Loki teaming up with himself? Like, we look at this from the audience right now, we're like, oh, he's going to fight himself. No,
okay, yeah. So at the end of the series, they're like, oh, we're chasing down Loki. I don't think Loki, a different different variant of Loki, is the villain. I think that's the red herring going on right now.
Well, and it seems very clear and obvious to me. One of the safest bets you can make in all of this is that Sofia DiMartino is probably playing Lady Loki. And I'm not mad that I know that. I think that works. It's fine. She's credited as 5 episodes, by the way, too. So we're probably going to find out next episode where she's at in all this.
Unless there's a secret 7th episode.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the secret 7th episode, just like in WandaVision. Or was it Falcon and Lunar Soldier? Which show was that we thought that there was going to be a secret episode?
Oh, Falcon Winter Soldier. Because there's only 6 episodes.
There's going to be 7 episodes.
Well, that would have been nuts.
Would have been dumb. What did you think of Loki watching his greatest hits, Mark? We referenced it earlier, but he has this really great conversation. I want to talk about Mobius separately a bit. But what did you think of this basically Loki in the course of 10 minutes got caught up on his whole MCU arc up to this point?
Well, really his greatest hits, because his greatest hits is what he's actually done, in quotations, was up to Avengers. That, I was just like, okay, he's just like reveling in what he's done. But the last half, when he comes, when there's that whole sequence where he's like escaping but comes back to that room where Mobius is showing him, his life, and he goes back and like sees the rest of his greatest hits. That was heartbreaking, where you could see, like, I think that's definitely in the spot where he figures out that, hey, I'm just going to help out because clearly, both my parents die, and then I end up just getting killed by Thanos, who I literally just got an army from. So I thought that whole sequence is pretty cool in my book.
I really, really love one of the great highlights of this show is how they chose not to hand wave what had happened, which I think would have been a very easy thing to do. And instead they leaned into it. Yes, some of us had seen it. And yes, it was a recap for our new watchers or listeners to this show. I really, really think that Walden did a great job on that. And I tip my hat to Marvel. I think it would have been easy to hand wave it, and they didn't. Mark, did you see the potential Easter egg when Loki steals the time button thing that he puts the necklace on Ravonna Renslayer, and he's like messing with her, and then he runs and he escapes, and they're chasing him throughout the facility. And did you see the potential Easter egg that some people on Reddit are freaking out about?
Which one?
There is a scene where he's running in a hallway, and then all of a sudden one of the Minutemen doors opens up. One of those square doors from their portal, and two people walk out. Were you able to see that by chance?
Was that the Skrull one?
No, the Skrull was in the beginning when he first got there. No, there was a man and a woman, and some people are speculating that was Peggy Carter. And and if you look at the clip, I will attach the clip in the show notes, people. It's in the show notes right now.
They're saying it's Peggy Carter.
They're saying Peggy
America.
Carter is a member of the Time Variance Authority, and that is how we're going to get Steve Rogers back, is what some people are seeing. So I thought you had seen that, Mark, but I must have not.
I missed that part. I'll have to go back and watch that.
After WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier, those things aren't happening. I just think it's fun to see them and go, oh, that might be it. It's really probably not, but it's fun to speculate and talk about it. What do you think about Mobius's character? Obviously, he's got a very detective vibe going to him. We see him engaging the scene in the church with the kid who has the blue bubble gum. We see him essentially recruit Loki. And one thing I really loved about Mobius as a character, Mark, before I pass it off to you, was how he held Loki accountable to everything. And he's like, no, tell me what you were going to be. I want to be a king. Why do you want to be a king? And what are you going to do once you're king? And then he shows him the hits that we talked about. And I think Owen Wilson is such a great casting here, Mark. 6 out of 6 this casting. And I really hope they do not kill him at the end of the season, or they do not place him somewhere else. A guy like that, I worry that he could be gone after this season just because he's that big enough of an actor. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I would just agree with you on great I think, 6 out of 6 casting for him and how he's played the character. I don't really know about a ton about Mobius. I always, when I first was seen, I was like, Morbius is going to be in this? Morbius is going to be the TVA guy?
I do.
Jared Leto's going to be in this? But yeah, when I really, obviously figured it out, it was just, that very much a detective vibe, very much like he's trying, we got a little glimpse into, clearly there's something bigger here, and, reveals at the end of this, series or episode that, hey, there's some time variant who is disrupting time, killing people, killing, these Minutemen, and they need to stop them, or stop them, or her, or
and they could
Mephisto,
potentially
whatever.
be creating new timelines, and that could create a whole set of problems that we address in other movies.
You just saying this made me think of that device that they have where they show the time variance, and they're like, it's about to get to the red line, So I wonder what that means. I would like I'm just thinking of this now.
The timelines, you mean? You said time variance because Loki is a time variant.
Oh, my bad. Yeah, the timeline where it shows.
Yeah, you're good.
In one of the scenes in the device, I think it's the first time we see. I don't know if it's in France or a different place that Owen Wilson's or Mobius is in, but you see the little device and it's showing like the the arc going towards this red line. So I wonder what happens if that line touches the red line or the original multiverse line, branches off and goes above this like danger red line. What would happen?
Yeah, I don't know. I wonder if it gets clipped or if that timeline becomes canon for the like if it hasn't even happened yet too. I wonder if that hasn't happened.
Or do like the timekeepers get involved or like you just said, like is that a timeline that just can't be fixed?
Yeah, I don't know.
So like that's how time, and maybe the person, or even if it is Loki or whoever, the reason why they're trying to do all these, different splits is to create this multiverse. Like they want a multiverse back. Like maybe it's an ancient being who lived during the time before one single multiverse to have several different verses. Yeah, that's. I just feel like I'm too far in the weeds now. I need you to take my hand and drag me back to the path.
No. This is a great question, and for sure we will get an answer on the subject because they showed it to us 2 times. Like they showed the device they looked at. So I'm with you there. I think that is a question. Like we need to know what is that thing that resets the timeline? What does that do? Does that like stop everybody that's on the planet and reset them to like a specific moment? What are all these different types of weapons and machines and gobbledygooks that they're using? How do they work? I want more details on those because I firmly believe the TVA is here to stay for a little bit. And I think they're going to pop up in other series. I think Loki is just the perfect way to describe it and have a journey that doesn't affect anybody else yet so people can get a good feeling about how this all works. Another thing that people might want to know too about Mobius, if you've heard that term from a Mobius strip, in mathematics, a Mobius strip band or loop, also spelled Mobius or Mobius, like Moebius, is a surface with only one side and only one boundary curve. The Mobius strip is the simplest non-orientable surface. It can be realized as a ruled surface. And obviously, we know the Mobius strip as a fan of the MCU from when Tony Stark discovered how to time travel. He made that through a Mobius strip in his house. Mobius to me is already becoming a fan favorite. I think he's, for me in the Disney Plus series so far, aside from maybe Agatha, is probably my favorite character we've met so far in this. And I think he did a great job. What did you think of Loki being revealed as D.B. Cooper in the Sacred timeline, Mark? Were you thrilled about that? I know you love those kinds of stories about people like that.
No, yeah, I actually thought that was pretty clever. I don't know if that's done in the comics or someone, the writer's like, hey, let's have this be like a little gag for like a highlight reel. But yeah, DB Cooper is never found, so maybe Loki in our multiverse is the real DB Cooper. Do you think the TVA is in the quantum realm? It makes me think. I don't remember if it's in the last Ant-Man or if it's in Endgame. Where like we see the panning of the city. Like, okay, let's go back. Loki, we see them walking through one of the buildings and we see like what this TVA city looks like. And instantly I looked to my beautiful wife Kelly and said, this kind of looks like the city that we saw in one of the times they went to the quantum realm, which I think it was Endgame, where you saw that little city in the background. You know what I'm talking about? Or maybe it was Ant-Man 2.
Well, and canonically in the comics, that technically is the last city before the timeline was erased. And I forget how it got erased. I think it has something to do with the Phoenix Force, actually. I could be way off on that. Somebody out there is totally pushing their glasses up.
Well, actually, Max.
Writing a tweet right now. They're well actuallying me right now. But to my understanding, Mark, that is the last civilization. And they're separate of the timeline. But that's a really good question. It would be a sweet twist, I think, in this series to let them be in that area and let Ant-Man, let Scott Lang, dumb Scott Lang, be the one navigating all this. And now he's a variant too.
It's very possible. And maybe that's, he's chasing Kang and that's how he gets there, or like, Kang and forces Ant-Man there or something. I don't know.
Do you think Kang is like a former TVA member or boss turned rogue? Or do you think he's just from this future city and he's like, no, I don't want it to end. He like knows it's about to end. Where do you think
maybe.
Kang is fitting into this? Like, are we going to see Kang in this series? Because
You know what? I firmly believe that we are. Like,
I think we are too. I really do.
I say he's more likely a Mephisto, even though I will also die on that sword. But I honestly believe Kang. Like, he has to show up. Like, if he's gonna be a villain, that's what I'm saying. There has to be a big bad at the end of the series to be like, okay, so that's kind of like at the which one? What? Yeah, it was the end of it, not the last Avengers, the first Avengers movie where the end scene is Thanos finally.
Yeah.
Like, I'll do it myself. So
that's the one thing the MCU is missing right now. I completely agree with you, Mark. They're missing a face as the bad.
And where other people have said, like, maybe the next Avengers movie will be Avengers Disassembled. So it's like, we really want them not together.
Oh, yeah. I firmly believe Disassembled is coming simply from the arc of WandaVision.
And maybe that's where these different timelines come into play, where they've, splintered off, where we come back around when there truly is a bigger villain, overarching villain that's, affecting all the different timelines, Fantastic Four timeline, mutant timeline, current timeline, other weird timelines where Tom Cruise is Tony Stark or whatever, and they all have to come together, kind of like Crisis on Infinite Earths, DC, cough cough, and fight the common villain to then uniform back the multiverse, and you take all the good parts and put them into one.
We get another Nightmare drop here too, Mark.
Did we? Oh yeah,
they reference Nightmare again.
Its own department for Nightmare.
Yeah. Like, for the being that Doctor Strange fights. Like, come on, dude. Like,
that's what
this
I'm saying.
Is
like,
so connected. This is crazy.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, there's no way they can excuse, like they did in WandaVision, for all their, like, oh, I didn't know Mephisto was a thing. We just put a bug there to, because we thought it was cool. Versus, like,
Such
there
baloney.
are so many
Yeah.
Easter eggs in this where it's like, if you did this not on purpose, the coincidence is just insane that would happen.
I will concede that the coincidence can be insane for Loki. Like, for episode 1. But if it happens again, and we get some very, like, on-the-nose Mephisto reference, that's going to be ridiculous.
We get, like, him walking in the woods, like that Bigfoot, like, video from, like, the 50s, where he's just, like, walking. It's like, who was that? Not Mephisto, as all the writers say for Loki. You would be so mad. You'd be so mad if we got something like that and everyone denied that it was Mephisto.
Yeah, I wonder, dude. This is interesting. I also wonder if they're going to do a Loki Avengers team up style for season 2. Like, I'm going way ahead of schedule here, right? But I really think, like, we are going to see a bunch of Lokis in this series, played by potentially other actors. I think we might even see
Matt Damon.
I'm gonna call my shot right
Loki.
here. I think Chris Hemsworth is going to show up in this season, and I think Chris Hemsworth is either going to play Thor in some capacity, or he's going to reverse roles with Loki in another timeline, and Loki will be the favorite brother, and Thor will not be the favorite brother.
Isn't in the trailer where Loki's sitting on the throne, so, like, there's got to be something where either Thor is not the favored, or Thor is the enemy, or something.
I just think Chris Hemsworth is going to be in this for sure.
And also, Chris Evans, had come back and did some filming. So, like, does he show up in this? Because different timelines, like, that's a very possible thing. Or, like you said prior,
Chris Evans is coming back sometime because, again, they've had opportunities in Falcon and the Winter Soldier to say he's dead, but they haven't said he's dead. They've said he's gone. And also,
he's on the moon.
They put time through Scott Lang.
Yep.
So they know how to de-age people. Captain America is coming back. I'm sorry.
Steve Rogers.
Steve Rogers, Captain America, is coming back.
No,
Sam Wilson, Captain America, is staying where he's at. But we're going to see that.
Nomad.
Did you like the robot reference at the beginning when they asked him if he had a soul? How hard did you laugh on a scale of 1 to 6?
Well, maybe a 3. I didn't laugh super hard. I thought it was funny where he then contemplated whether or not he may be a robot or not.
That is when I laughed. That was my 5 out of 6 laugh.
Yeah, that one was pretty funny. But then, when he asked the question, basically, this must happen a lot to ask this question. So,
yeah, or I loved too when he asked out loud in the line. I forget what he asked, but then the Minuteman, Tara Strong's clock character,
yep,
word for word repeats everything he says. The weapon of how they destroy people is also crazy to see.
It is, but I wanted to back up to that thing he walked through, like that, where it printed off an aurora. Yes. And not like an actual picture of him. So I wonder if that's going to come into play later on in some fashion. Because I thought that was the neat detail, if that's all it was.
It's just crazy to me that we're going to start talking about timeline auras, timeline variants, multiverses, in a way that is so unique and able to actually be tracked logistically. All while on top of all this, you mentioned it earlier, they detained a Skrull. So we still have to talk about Skrulls, right? Like, are Skrulls potentially going to be engaged in, like when they go down the eventual Skrull versus Kree war, does the TVA have anything to do with that? Obviously, we've got to talk about Avengers Disassembled. Does TVA know that the world has to end at the hands of Wanda, and then they're going to try to figure out how to stop it, and the TVA is trying to stop them? How does this all play out? Like, does Wanda create the X-Men? Do the X-Men come from a multiverse? There's tons of questions that open themselves up in this in literally branched out ways, just like in their timeline that they're referencing here. This show has me spinning in a lot of ways. I don't really have a coherent thought today past I believe that Chris Hemsworth is coming back, and I think we're going to see an Avengers-style version of Loki's that take on the TVA in some capacity. I think Owen Wilson is a good guy, but I think everybody else in the TVA is working for somebody that's bad, and I don't know who that is, and maybe it is Kang.
Technically, all the TVA people would be working for the Timekeepers, as, they created them.
But who's talking to the Timekeepers, right? Like, that's
well, think of it like this, Max. Let's go biblical. The Timekeepers could literally directly talk to all of them at once in their mind.
Yeah, but Wunmi Masako's character, she made it very clear, or was it Ravonna Renslayer? Ravonna Renslayer. Yeah, it was. So Ravonna Renslayer. Ugh, that word's so hard.
Yeah, she said she dictates.
She's the one that said she got the directive from the Timekeepers. Well, how do we verify that?
And that's what goes into, like, are these organic beings, or are they some type of, like, hybrid, cyborg type thing, or total robots?
Or are they from the future and they're preventing anything from changing their future?
I don't know, maybe.
That's the question I have.
That's what you go with time travel shows, man. There's so many options. There's so many variants.
I don't know if I fully believe that they were created. I don't know if I buy that yet. I think that might be a lie.
So they just became?
No, I'm saying I think they are our future. So to kind of use the analogy of another movie or another property, I'd say Tenet. How in Tenet, the protagonist is fighting the future people.
Yep.
I think it's the same concept here. And I think Loki is going to find that out. I think Owen Wilson's going to find that out, because Owen Wilson's not giving these vibes of, like, betrayal. He is pretty pure-hearted. Like, he helps the kid out at the beginning. He works with Loki, and he's trying to redeem Loki. He's holding him accountable, but he's really working hard with Loki.
Yeah, but maybe he's also gaslighting Loki, and he's really good at that. So then we
already did a gaslighting movie. You can't do another gaslighting movie. We already did that with Captain Marvel. Stop.
Just saying.
You know that. Be better than that.
You're right. I want to be better than this because I want Loki to actually be good. You're right, Max.
Do you want that to be the arc at the end of this? Do we want a redemptive arc for him, or do we want him to kind of stay anti-hero a little bit?
I think, well, I don't know if you can really give him a redemptive arc, because we already got that. We got to get something different from him.
That's what I mean. That's why I ask.
Like, I was talking with my beautiful wife, Kelly, about this. Are we going to get where he kind of, at the end of the series, or however they end this, where he kind of becomes a good guy again, and then the TVA, because, like, what you're saying, like, maybe there's a bigger villain, so, like, he doesn't go back to where he was, and he gets placed into the current MCU timeline, and it's just like, hey, I already saw everything. Just like I related it to the movie Beer Fest, when the people who made Super Troopers made this, like, beer competition Olympic movie, and the guy who plays Farva in Super Troopers dies in Beerfest, and then at his funeral, his twin brother comes back, and he tells the group, be like, hey, just treat me like my brother, like no one, I was there the whole time. Like, I just feel like that's going to happen with Loki. He's just going to come back and fit right back in. So, to answer your question the long way.
That is a tricky part of the show. Because the way it ended for him in Infinity War was very, in my opinion at least, it felt really clean, pure, and crisp.
Well, and he led with his left hand, so clearly it wasn't the real Loki, so whatever.
You're still in that camp, huh?
Someone's got to in this group.
Yeah. Someone's got to play Mephisto's advocate.
Hey, as long as the conspiracy stays alive, it lives.
Fair.
Or as long as we talk
fair.
about the conspiracy, it lives.
Any other things from Loki episode 1 that you want to talk about, Mark? We were all over the place today, guys, but this is how we do it, and we wanted to talk about a lot of it. Do you think Loki is the villain? I'll end with that before I ask that question.
Do I think all Loki's a villain, or the Loki's the villain? Oh no, Max, you left. No, Max, no. You left me. Max. Max. Max, I'm rejoining you. Yeah, like this call dropped. Okay, so I yes, I didn't stop recording. Oh, well, okay, no. Well,
Yeah, that's the question I'm asking. Oh, it's both and. Do you think it's going to be a Loki? Someone named Loki?
I don't know. It's tough to say. I mean, why would Mobius say that, hey, we're hunting you as a variant? Which then makes me think, like, at what point did a different Loki become a variant and then decided to hunt everything down? So yeah, maybe that's the red herring. Like, we actually are, fighting Loki, but like, really, this variant Loki is actually a pawn of like Kang or Galactus or someone else bigger. But yeah, I'm sure we'll get a Loki versus Loki fight. Maybe we'll get 2 Lokis fighting 1 Loki. Maybe we'll get a legion of Lokis fighting a legion of Lokis. I don't know.
A legion of Lokis.
And maybe it's Mephisto who can, in this timeline, morph into what looks like a Loki to, get people off his trail.
Gosh, they're going to do Mephisto one day. They have to now because so many people have asked for it.
We'll just show him and kill him right away. Just be like, there you go. You saw him. He's gone. No more. We're done.
Anything else you want to chat about before we head to the top 5?
I was gonna ask. We brought it up. Like, are we gonna get like an actual Avenger for an episode or 2? And you're thinking it's gonna be Thor.
Yes, I think it's Thor, no question.
I think that's the easy choice, and makes the most sense, given that it's Loki. But I'm going. I want to still go that it's current Steve Rogers. Like,
wow.
That's what I want. Or like what you said, like it was that Peggy and Steve that came through that portal. So like,
well, it didn't look like Steve, but it did look like Peggy. It's not going to be, but those are the kinds of things that I would love to see come to fruition down the line of like, oh, it was behind you the whole time, right? They did do that in Spider-Man technically with Mysterio. So who's to say they wouldn't do it again here? I also think Frigga and Coulson are going to be in this. And I'd put a small wager on that because they had just such a big portion of today's episode. I just feel like that's low-hanging fruit. I feel like that's totally going to happen. So, yeah, that's just my perspective on it.
Does Loki wield Mjolnir in an episode in this series?
Ooh, that's a great question. Oh, my goodness. Mark, that's one of the best questions we've ever asked on this show.
You're welcome.
I'm going to say yes. Only because I want to see it.
Mm-hmm. Because you got to think, in a timeline, he's got to be worthy for it.
Fair.
Yeah.
That's a great question, Mark.
Loki, God of Thunder.
And we both, oh my goodness. Well, and that's to me why I think there's going to be some arc where we find out that in a timeline he's the good brother and then Thor's the bad brother. So maybe that's the arc and that's how we see it.
And in the trailer we see basically New York fallen, like destroyed. So it'll be interesting to see what that turns into.
Yeah, and that looks like Black Widow in the trailer. So maybe we see Scarlett Johansson or a different version of Black Widow played by somebody else.
And that's the other tidbit just to think about. Like, this is supposed to lead up to the release of Black Widow, coming. So I wonder if there's going to make any ties to that.
I don't think that those two would tie just given the circumstances of everything, but
Maybe.
We'll see. Maybe, dude, nothing's on the table. All right, real quick. Let's head to the top 5. We're going in 3, 2. You're entering the top 5 on the Infinity Bros podcast. Starting now. Every week we like to end our show with a top 5 water cooler discussion based on something we've talked about in the previous day or weeks. This week, obviously, we've talked about Loki, so we want to give you our personal top 5 favorite moments from episode 1, season 1. We're going to call it season 1 right now, Mark. We're going to call it season 1 because it sounds like they're going to get a second season of Loki. Since it's only 2 of us, we will go in back-to-back order. Any honorable mentions for you, Mark?
Everything else I don't talk about.
Okay, the rest of the episode. Okay, good for you, good for you. I'll start with number 5. My number 5 is Owen Wilson as Mobius. I think this is one of those spot-on acting choices that the MCU has made in a while. Again, aside from Agatha, I think this is... I would put him above John Walker even. I think he's just been really, really crushing it this episode. I know John Walker, played by Wyatt Russell, was a total D-bag, but I, for whatever reason, think Owen Wilson is just knocking it out of the park already, and I love his chemistry with Tom Hiddleston. I think it's going to pay off in the long run. So my number 5 is Owen Wilson as Mobius.
Oh, we're going back and forth like the old days?
Yeah, we're going to go back and forth this time because it's only 2 of us.
Well, all right, now I'm all done with it. Okay, my number 5 is another Nexus reference. Because to me, that just, Galactus, Silver Surfer, King, whoever else associated with Nexus, Scarlet Witch, there's so many weeds that can be played through with more Nexus references. So that's my number 5.
Go ahead, number 4.
I was saying my number 4 is Loki's journey to basically come to terms with his current situation. Because you see, we get it in very quick manner. Or actually, we don't know how long it really is because Mobius says time, is different here in the TVA. But, his realization where, hey, I'm proud of what I've done, but then seeing what happens to me and what I do in the future kind of humanizes him in a sense. And then comes to grips all right, I'd rather help, or at least not die basically with that weapon and help Owen Wilson while probably figuring out how he can survive and not have to, go back to the timeline or be eliminated. So that's number 4.
My number 4 is recapping Endgame, right? I think what you're saying is completely valid. I would go the opposite direction. I liked how they recapped everything. I also liked how we got that short scene and we got to get reacclimated with who this Loki was before he stepped into Thor: The Dark World. And I thought the recap of Endgame in the first 5 minutes of this episode did a great job of that. And so recapping of Endgame is very broad, but I thought that was really good too. My number 3 is that this episode was 50 minutes. I think that Marvel heard the calls early on. I really do think that, Mark. I think it.
Hey, those emails you sent to Feige finally panned out for you.
Those tweets, those rotten tweets that I was tweeting. Yeah, I was very pleased that this episode was long. It felt like the perfect amount of time. When the episode ended, I was like, good, I'm full. I'm ready to wait for next week. I really, really hope all 6 episodes are the length that it is. It looks right now like that will be the case. And I really, really appreciate that because they have a lot of story to tell. And I think it's going to require a lot of dialogue to get it accomplished. So that is my number 3, Mark.
My number 3 is when Mobius and Loki were talking about, being, or I think Loki was talking about being what was it, top conqueror, top bad guy type of stuff. And Mobius basically says, well, you're more like a pussycat. I LOL'd super hard. When Loki thought he was this big bad guy, and Mobius is like, nah, in our books, you're, not as bad. Yeah. Do you not remember that at all?
No, I not only remember it, I would echo in the sense of I love how humbled Loki got in this show.
Yeah.
This episode. Just in one episode of 50 minutes, he's completely humbled and stripped down to his bare bones.
For sure. And my number 2 is Loki also being the villain? ? That was because you don't really see, like, when they go back to like 1858, like you see like the shadow figure who has super like 1,000 years in the future tech with them, and we just see like this cloaked figure. So, is it Loki? Is it not? We'll find out.
My number 2 was the Nexus reference being referenced a second time as well. To add on to what you're saying, I think it's going to be fascinating to see how Scarlet Witch plays in all this. Is she the answer to the problem, or is she the reason the problem exists? I think it could be both and. I think it could be either or. That's not really a statement. That's really broad. I just said it could be anything. However, I would simply say that I think Scarlet Witch is the catalyst for how things will go moving forward. I don't know if she is fully in regards to time travel, though, the bad guy. I do think on Earth, just with them in their Avengers bubble in New York, she is a threat. In a grand scope multiverse sense, I think she's going to be the key to solving the riddle, if I would say that. So, my number 1 was Loki finding out about the stones being paperweights. I thought this was amazing. I thought this was well written. This was the most shocking part of this show. We touched on it a little bit on the front end of this episode, but I really, really believe that this was one of the wisest choices they've made so far in the MCU to basically take these MacGuffins off the board and do it in a way that was comical, that was very meta, and spoke to, hey, we understand that these things are crazy and that they're ridiculous and that they've been feared for this whole time. And then to watch Loki have the internal dialogue of how do I get into power now? Oh, it's going to be through the TVA. So yes, while I agree he is doing things for good, I do think in the back of his head, Mark, he is going to try to work his way through the rankings of being in the TVA and potentially even leading it. There's a chance that this series could end with Loki being in charge of all this too. I think that's a very, very real possibility.
With seeing all those Infinity Stones, it made me think like there's a ton of stories behind all those Infinity Stones. And like who had possession of them, and to the point where the TV had to step in and be like, "Nope, you don't get these." So I like your number 1. My number 1 is when they're in France, and Mobius is, they're investigating another murder in the timeline. The kid comes into the church. Has this, and the other thing that was mind blowing is like he has this device and shows the kid. The kid probably has no idea what that is, and then he notices his mouth is blue, and probably in his mind he's like, oh, "There's nothing in the city that could do that." Pulls out candy basically, and then also asks the kid like, "Hey, what did the guy look like, or whoever it looked like?" Points up to the stained glass giant cathedral window, and it's the devil. So if that's not a big arrow shot that the devil, aka Mephisto, is not behind this, or at least this killing, then, I don't know, man. That's my number 1. People said Mephisto's not in this, and all of a sudden, hey, who's the guy who just killed this? Oh, Satan. Mephisto. Okay.
The only reason that I think it's probably not is because Loki is the god of mischief, and if it's another version of Loki, they could create an illusion.
Very true. And that's the other thing, but both could go both ways, though.
Exactly. I am, in regards to your passion and how you and I both think that Mephisto is in the background still in something, I'm not backing down on that with you either.
Well, and we got Nightmare, too, so that's where it's like...
Yeah, totally. I'm with you. I'm with you all the way. Those are our lists. You can send us your list on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. You can also email us your list so we can read it on the air. At the Infinity Bros, Infinity Bros podcast at gmail.com. Mark, this was a great episode. We got into the weeds, but not too deep.
Not too deep indeed, sir. We could have gone super deep, deeper than ever before, but we saved everyone an extra hour of their life.
No doubt. If you want to hear some recaps that we've had, you can check out our WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier episodes. We will do these every week for every episode, so you'll start hearing us on Wednesday, Thursday, or Fridays moving forward based on how our weeks look. And you can check us out on theinfinitybros.com. You can also check us out on Discord and Twitch. We are streaming a ton right now, so you can hear from Infinity Bro Isaac, Infinity Bro Robbie, Infinity Bro Jarrett. Those guys are absolutely kicking butt on Twitch, so please make sure you check those guys out. All you have to do is click the link tree in the show notes. It'll take you right to all those things. We would love it if you're still here and you haven't done so yet. If you would leave a rating for our podcast, it would mean the world to us. We'll read it on the air, and also you will be entered into an exclusive drawing to win an Infinity Gauntlet, and then you can put that on your desk as a paperweight as well to be like the TVA. So as always, we love you guys 3000, and we will talk to you soon. Have a good one. See ya. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Infinity Bros podcast. You can find the Infinity Bros on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at the Infinity Bros. Feel free to send listener feedback via email at infinitybrospodcast@gmail.com.